you this morning. It is beautifully autumnal in my garden. I don't know what it's like in yours, but I have got my flip-flops on, bare feet, and as I'm slapping around the garden, I got this, well, quite nice wetness to the air. It's not actually nice having my feet wet, but that's what I love living in England, is we definitely get all four seasons. So if you're watching live, leave me the hashtag live or a comment and let me know whereabouts in the world you are. And if you're watching on replay, leave the hashtag replay and we can catch up in the comments later on. So the big question of the day is, did you spend all yesterday watching the Queen's funeral on the TV? And what was your preferred channel? I naturally always gravitate to the BBC when there's matters of importance happening. And it quite amazed myself because I managed to watch from about 10:15 in the morning till about 5:15 in the afternoon. So that was a full working day of sitting on my bottom watching the TV, and not surprisingly, I was feeling a little bit foggy by the end of it. But we had our roving buffet all set out with my mum's or my grandmother's double damask linen tablecloth on our coffee table, some of my thrifted red and white crockery, and some blue and white crockery of my mum's, Vale Royal that was called. That was our tea service when we were little, in the days when we sat down and we had cups and saucers rather than migrating to mugs, which I can remember was a very exciting day. And then I pre-cooked some food, so I had a lovely quiche. And I don't know whether you watch Nadia, who was she a finalist in the Great British Bake Off? But she's got a programme on at the moment about it seems to be quick food, doesn't it? Quick and budget-friendly food. A quiche made up of swirls of phyllo pastry, so I had that. And then my attempt at making vol au vents using pre-rolled puff pastry. Is it puff pastry? Yeah, puff pastry. I don't think I'm a huge vol au vent fan in normal times, so they didn't go down particularly well. They looked okay. And then out of the leftover pastry, I coated it with beaten up egg, sprinkled cheese on it, and then twisted it. So we had sort of cheese sticks as well. And also, because we were finally getting into watching the Great British Bake Off, my daughter and I made a red velvet cake, and I don't think I've ever had a red velvet cake before. So good morning. You got Sky yesterday, 10:30 till 6. Yes, catch up with you later. So yes, the flowers are beautiful, and that is the theme for today's live video. Flowers fit for the Queen. So of course the main event of the day, and I thought this service was absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that the church service was exactly the hour and so well rehearsed that nobody was called forward. It was just absolutely seamless that people were presumably being escorted from their seats to go up and do the readings, but you didn't see any of that. I thought it was really good. But of course my main eyes, and perhaps yours too as you're watching a flower arranging channel, was looking at the flowers on the coffin. And I must admit, I did spend a small amount of time right in front of the telly with my camera going, I need a better picture. And of course it's that delay between you spotting those flowers, getting down there, saying that, sorting the camera out, and I kept missing bits. But did you manage to get a really good look? And that's quite something I'm looking forward to today, is just having a trawl through the newspapers and through social media and probably the floristry press to get a really good photograph of the beautiful wreath that was laid on top of the Queen's coffin and a full ingredients list of what was on it. So there was a press release that did explain that the flowers had been cut from Clarence House, Buckingham Palace, and the King Charles III's house at Highgrove House as well. And it was foam free, and I understand it was a twig and moss construction with flowers picked from the garden. And there were some of the plant material had special significance, and others was just natural garden plant material. So I thought that was fantastic. So I thought, as a tribute to the Queen, I would try and do something similar using materials from my garden. So I've already picked some oak, so English oak, and I'm going to have to refer to my notes here because I can't remember. The oak was Strength of Love. Now, Often our hedge down the side is a native English hedge, and there's a mix of all sorts in there. Wild rose, blackthorn, hawthorn. It's not beech, it's something similar to beech. And I believe either we planted this oak from an acorn, or it was part of that the mixed native hedge species. And I must admit, when I went up there, my memory was of having an oak tree halfway down the garden, it's sort of hidden in all that green down there. I think perhaps because an oak tree is so large and we live in town, so close to other residential properties, I wonder, it's certainly been hacked back. Good morning, Lisa. Yes, weren't the flowers beautiful? They were so nice. And I don't know whether you watched, Lisa, last week's YouTube live when I bundled up some flowers, picked some flowers in my garden and tied up the string. I did take them down to our remembrance garden in town that afternoon, and I laid my flowers out, and everything else was wrapped up in cellophane. So I put my flowers, meagre flowers, down on the side. And then, because it's bank holiday yesterday and my running club takes place on a Monday, but we don't run on bank holidays, we went out, my husband and a friend, we went out for a run first thing in the morning, and we ran past the memorial garden, and I thought, oh, I'll just have a check on my flowers, make sure they're there. And when I looked from where I'd placed them, because I can remember where I put them, I couldn't see them, and it just seemed to be another sea of cellophane. It was quite perturbed, really. So I might go, when I go into town later on today, I might just go and have another look. So I don't know whether somebody's gone through and perhaps, seeing as I would say, there were zinnias, and zinnias hold up really well. In fact, you can dry zinnias. I've never actually tried it, but I've certainly kept zinnias in a vase longer than they should have been kept in a vase. And I don't quite know what's happened, whether they've just been moved, but why would you move someone else's flowers? Or whether somebody's thought they were dead, or whether somebody who isn't in the flower world has decided that it's not a proper tribute unless it's wrapped up in plastic, which is counter to what the Buckingham Palace and the Royal Gardens advice is, wasn't it, to take the cellophane off your flowers? Because I was half thinking that I would perhaps go to the Memorial Gardens and take the cellophane off the flowers that they're there, which I think there was a whole team of volunteers doing that in the Royal Parks. But again, it's that thing that if someone puts a tribute down, you don't really want to be fiddling with it unless you've got, authority to do so. So I will have to go on the hunt for my flowers. They should be in reasonable condition. We haven't had overly hot weather in the last week. They would have been on the ground, so they would have been getting moisture. They should still be there, or the remnants of them should still be there. So we'll have to wait and see. So yes, I have picked some oak from my garden, and it's on a very small stem because I think my husband must have, I'm trying not to say severely hacked. He's obviously cut the oak back because he doesn't want it to take over the garden. It's just part of our greenery. Yes, Lisa, I hope they're still there. So I've got oak for strength of love. And then if you've ever been to class with me, every time somebody brings a piece of rosemary, I always chatter up, speak up, rosemary for remembrance. It's just one of those things that have been drilled into me. So there was rosemary in the tribute as well. And some people have said, was there lavender in the tribute? But the rosemary had I think it was rosemary with flowers on it, because so you get the little purpley, mauvey blush of the flowers there. And my rosemary is quite stiff and straight, but that you can also get a trailing rosemary as well. And that was what was sort of snaking its way across, giving it that sort of wild, natural look. It was a different kind of rosemary. So the question of the day is, what else could you spot in the funeral tribute, and did anything else have significance in it? So I'm going to start making my own tribute to the Queen with inspiration from the tribute that was put onto her coffin by King Charles. So, I can't rustle up, a twig and a moss base quickly. So what I've done here is I've gone through a selection of glass bottles. Now the irony here is that I did spend some of that quiet time over the weekend. I don't know if you can hear that. We've got our builder back again, and he's sawing, and I'm filming this underneath the bathroom window. So we're probably competing with each other. Now, I spent some of the quiet time over the bank holiday, which did feel a little bit like Christmas, didn't it? That hush everywhere. And because we had, you know, a nice buffet lunch stroke tea, it was like Christmas, or it was like lockdown, wasn't it? But without the presents and the worry that you're going to get ill. So I've been through my workshop and I've decided that it's about time to get rid of some of the clutter in my workshop. So I have put all these assorted bottles, and some of them must be quite old. They've got a sort of greeny tinge to them. Look at this one. Now this is called, do you know what that's called? The bit at the bottom. You get them on wine bottles, and I think if you go to a posh restaurant and they pour, they hold the bottle like that. I believe it's called a punt, because I have a friend with a surname called Punt. So I believe that's a punt in there. So I've got these sort of green tinged ones, and then some more modern sort of milk bottle looking ones. And I thought what I would do is just do my own sort of meadow version of the Queen's, the floral tribute. So I'm going to put my flowers in water, so taking off the stems here. Recut the stems because it's been out of water a short while, and this is the easiest kind of arrangement to make when you just do the cut and plonk. And then with this tiny bit of oak, of course I need to make sure I pull off the lower leaves that are going to be in the water, because otherwise they go manky. Recut the stems. So I'm going to put this in my teeny tiny vase here. This looks like a little bit like an inkwell, and this was something I bought at a flower festival in the summer in a village local to us. So if you're interested in finding out more about flower festivals and what you can expect, I do have a video library. I think there's only 3 videos in at the moment, but I thought I might you know, the more I love visiting flower festivals. They normally take place over the summer, and then you morph into Christmas tree festivals at Christmas time. So I will leave a link to that when the video is published. So that is just something really pretty. And then I thought, why don't I cut some dahlias? So there were absolutely loads of beautiful dahlias on the Queen's tribute, as well as English garden roses. So I'm on a Facebook group for gardeners. I'm not a gardener, it's a Radio 4 Gardeners Question Time group, and some of the members of that group were saying that they thought the roses were actually named for the Queen Elizabeth and Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother as well, so that would have extra special significance. So let's go down to the garden, and I've got my purple dahlias. And did you notice the hydrangea as well? There was one hydrangea, and I don't know whether it was partly propping up the card that Charles had sent. So you had the card, and you could see it was signed Charles R, and that was where the little spider was running across. And then it had a big, if the card was there, it had a big hydrangea. Can't remember now, it was in the back or the front, but it sort of had a bluish tinge to it. So I thought I would add dahlias to my little jam jar collection, and also a hydrangea. Now, because this is an arrangement, as it was for the Queen, using natural garden plant material, I thought I might as well just go around the garden and see what else I can find. You know, if this was Highgrove, I'd be picking what I could find. So let's come with me, and I will go a little bit around the garden, and we'll see what else we have got in season. And I mustn't forget the sedum as well. I'm just looking at my little list here of things that, oops, got a bit wonky there. So we had oak, rosemary, dahlias, and sedum. So, and the hydrangea as well. So with my sedum, it's got quite a big head to it. So I'm just going to cut off a side shoot, because I know that I'm going to be using it in my jam jars, and I don't want to overwhelm it. And my hydrangeas are a little bit shaggy. I am coveting a hydrangea bush in town, and what I must do, because I always think I ought to go and ask them if I can cut some, and perhaps when I go into town to check on my tribute at the Memorial Gardens, if I take my scissors and a big bag, I could always ring on their doorbell. I still don't know that I'm quite brave enough to do that. So dahlias. We've got lots of, oh, I cut the wrong thing there. So this is going to be as near as I can get my tribute to be. So I have got my sedum, which is quite bulky, and then my dahlias. So I've just got this deep sort of burgundy variety, and I've got some yellow ones as well, so I might go back and cut the yellows. So just keeping it really, really simple. They've got some nice leaves on them, but they're in the wrong place for my putting them into my little vase. And one thing I am going to do though, they're both exactly the same height, so I'm going to, the smaller one, if I push the smaller one up and then cut the stems level, they will just sit as a slightly different height. So I will show you that in a minute. And then the hydrangea. So this is probably the best hydrangea we've got. Look how small, it's only, you know, smaller than my fist. And some of the little petals are going a bit brown. So I thought, you know, it's in tribute to the Queen. I need to have it as nice as I possibly can. So I'm just sort of a bit of a, you know, a pick and a dust sort of thing. And then take the leaves off. I'm going to keep the two underneath and then put that in a vase like that. So this is how it is shaping up. So that is all that I've got, which is the same as was in as the Queen's tribute. Lisa, you're saying they're dried up rather than dried for keeping. Yes, because our hydrangea never does very well. We must have had it, or a succession of hydrangeas, you know, for the last 5 or 7 years, and they never really come to anything. So I think our hydrangea is like a really slow burn. And you do see people's garden billowing. So the ones I got my eye on in town is billowing. It's in a terraced house, and it's billowing over the pavement. And I just think I could, you know, I could do my civic duty, couldn't I, and just trim off the bottom, but of course I can't without asking. That would be a bit naughty, wouldn't it? So what I'm going to do then is see whether I can cut some more bits and bobs from the garden just to fill up my little tray here. Now it's sort of got a pinkish tone. So the Queen's tribute was quite colourful, and that was to reflect the fact that it was on the colourful royal standard. And the blurb I read said there was some white in it, but I didn't spot any white other than the very, very pale mauve flowers, which aren't white, but there was a whiteness to them of the lavender. I did spot yellow. Now, we were having a discussion on my Facebook page whether the yellow was tulips or roses. I think they were roses because tulips is the wrong time of the year. Sorry about that. And yellow roses symbolise friendship. And I also spotted some Helicryson, which are the straw flower. So if you've been to Zoom flower class before, we've used straw flowers a few times. Straw flower is Helicryson. And there were cosmos as well. No, it wasn't cosmos. I keep getting cosmos and scabious muddled up. It was scabious, the dark-headed one. And if you watched my video that went live yesterday afternoon, you would have seen the same scabious, the one with a little bit of a shake. And I was making a Dutch hedge design, a parallel design in moss. So if you haven't seen that already, I'll make sure I link it in the description underneath this video. So they were really sort of a dark burgundy, almost black looking, in the tribute as well, and then all the different colours pinks. Now I did see again in this gardening group I belong to, somebody thought they'd seen antirrhinum snapdragons, and I keep looking and I can't see a snapdragon, but I think there were some crab apples in there, you know, tiny apples that almost looked like berries. They were quite small because the crab apples are kind of quite heavy. And there was one bit of greenery, did you notice it, sort of sticking upwards and outwards? And a local garden blogger, the Middle-Sized Garden, commented on my Facebook post. I've got to link her channel actually. It's Alexandra. I'll link her channel in the description when I post this live. And she said that in the group she was chatting on, they thought the foliage was called Nandina. So Nandina is a foliage I'm not familiar with. When I was looking at it, I thought, oh, is that sort of like a Japanese maple? But I think she's right, it is a Nandina, having looked it up. So it had a sort of central leaf, and then it had two smaller leaves off to the side, a bit like a fleur-de-lis symbol. And then it was quite airy and leggy in the same way that a Japanese maple is. So let me see what else I can get in my garden just to fill up my bud vases, and that would be a lovely tribute to have for the Queen until, you know, we meet again next time. So let's have a look. So I have got some beautiful, there were scented pelargoniums in there as well. Now, pelargoniums is what we would call geraniums. Now, I'm just going to take one because you know what it's like if I take more things. This is a Cranesville Geranium. So, pelargonium and geraniums are, actually I'm not a gardener, I don't know, but it's the same leaf, isn't it? And we've only got 2 of those. I've just cut one. Centre place. There you go. And then salvia. So somebody who watched the other week, I said that I thought these were penstemon, and I was corrected that they are salvia here. So I've got intense pink there, and perhaps my touch of white will be the salvia hot lips. It looks like it's red lipstick. And then perhaps the verbena bonaris. I don't know why I keep picking this because I can't say it. I've got a tiny bit of fuchsia. Oh, the zinnias are always a winner. I'm going to take a small zinnia so it doesn't overwhelm everything else. I've also got some fennel. Can we introduce some yellow for the royal standard? A little bit of yellow as well. Oh, look, and as I come back, here's me thinking I've got no flowers at all in my garden. There are some stems of honeysuckle. So when I look at my garden, I always say I've got no flowers in my garden. But I have managed to get a few bits and pieces. So I must be delicate with them. Honeysuckle on its last leg. So what I will do is cut out the bits that are obviously dead. Oops. And then the fennel. So look at this. The flowering fennel was on the bottom piece on a very short stem, but what I could do is if I cut off that taller bit, I could then sort of group that down so it becomes more of, more eye-catching. I might put that in there. I might have just one vase of yellow for my gold in my royal standard. And then perhaps I'll colour block this, my verbena bonaris. I don't know how you say that. Every time I look it up, and I think I really must remember this. So my salvia, isn't that a shocking pink? And then my hot lips. I don't really like salvia. I find the colour a bit too intense. But nice tall bit there. And I might put a small bit there. So although I'm just thinking that something smells, or is it perhaps just the smell of fresh greenery? I don't know. And then, where is that going to go? Perhaps a little bit like that. So here we have it, my tribute to the Queen, using some of the materials that she had on her funeral tribute on top of the coffin, and then some other bits and pieces which I've got in my garden too. So that brings us to the end of today's live video. Now I've got a question for you. I did title this series Flowers in My Garden and challenged myself whether I could make a display of flowers, a vase of flowers throughout the summer months for my garden. Now, Zoom flower class starts next Tuesday at 12 o'clock, and if you're interested in signing up for class, the listing has now gone live on my website, and I will leave a link to that in the show notes underneath this video. So if you're interested in coming along to Zoom flower class, you have got a week to sign up. Now, if you're watching this in the future and you think, I've missed the first 2 classes of Zoom flower class, I always send out the recording afterwards, so the teaching part of class always gets sent out. So you might be late to start, but you won't have missed out on anything. You do not have to have a set level of flower arranging skills. So thanks, Lisa. They are great colours, very regal, in fact. So if you never arranged flowers before, this would be a great class to start with. It's all about techniques, and if you are quite an experienced flower arranger, because we're talking about techniques, it's really going to be about finessing your skills. So this is going to be a very flower light class because it's about the skills. So again, thinking about what your flower budget is, you don't have to buy loads and loads of flowers to do the class. And in fact, some of the ladies that come to class never buy any flowers because they come along because they enjoy the demonstrations and they like the chat. So if you've got any questions about the class, leave me a comment, or I'll leave my email address if you want to drop me a note. So the question of the day is, another question of the day, it's about 6 so far, isn't it? that would you like me to carry on doing a YouTube live? Perhaps coming through the autumn months, and I might put my coat on and an umbrella up perhaps. But let me know whether you'd be interested in continuing this series and just talking about what's in my garden and being a tiny bit mindful, just a little bit of peace and quiet, time to reflect, relax, and sort of put all the troubles of the world to one side. So I might put that in there as well. That was when I picked wrong. It was the bud that's gone over. It's a bit like the cycle of life though, isn't it? Your new buds, the full bloom, and then as we all know, we go over at the end. So I've got a tiny bit of clearing up, and I think in tribute to Her Majesty, I might leave that on my patio table to enjoy, but just a few stems in those regal colours of the Royal Standard to remember the Queen and everything she did for us. So I shall say goodbye, and I'll catch up with you probably in my Facebook group. That's where I hang out the most. And if you're on Facebook, again, I'll leave a link in the show notes of this video. But if you search for Flower Start, one word, Flower Start World is called, not Flower Start one word world, Flower Start World, you will find me over on Facebook. And that's our closed Facebook group, our private group, so you can share all sorts of bits and pieces, ask any question. No question is too daft, and you can do that in a private space. Oh, Lisa, thank you. Lisa's saying she's a fan of my videos. Thank you very much, Lisa. I think it would be quite nice, actually, to continue, subject to you, doing something you want to see. And I'm thinking as well, on the run-up to Christmas, that we could start looking for Christmas foliages and things like that. And really, as you can see, although my garden is quite large for a town garden, it's not fully stocked. I don't live in one of those beautiful gardens that look like it comes with a stately home. It's just a very ordinary garden that's got a lot of, it's grown for wildlife interest rather than flower arranging panache. So if I can find something in my garden to arrange with, I'm sure that you can too. So my cup of tea's gone cold, so it's time for me to, do I take one more sip? It's as cold as water, cold as cold water. So I'm going to put the kettle on and have another go with that tea bag. So I'll catch up with you this time next week for my autumn series of being out in the garden with me. Hope you have a great day, and I'll catch up with you over on Facebook, or perhaps I will see you in class, either live locally or my Zoom classes. That's all from me for now, and I'll catch up with you next time.